Welcome to the Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal Emac coming to you with one Adam Ship My Money Share as we are in a rain-soaked East Coast on Friday night, just having our eye out, seeing what's happening out there. But let's just jump right in because we're going to go through the first 8 games on the slate. We're going to go game by game. We, of course, are brought to you by Osmo and Yahoo, presenting sponsor. If you have not yet signed up for Yahoo, when you do, utilize the promo code OSMO when you make your first DFS deposit, and you will receive $30 in Yahoo Special Player Rewards points, which are just as good as cash, matching you up to your first $30 of any deposit. The first deposit, that is. Adam, we're going to hit the weather here, but we want to point out that in Kansas City at New York, looks like there's a pretty heavy chance of rain. We've got, 60 degrees there at 1 o'clock, and then it's going to be, 15-mile-an-hour winds, crosswinds. We also have Detroit dealing with a good chance that they're going to have some rain. They're hosting the Chicago White Sox, and then once again in Pittsburgh, and San Francisco and Pittsburgh, I think they're still in a rain delay. As we're recording this, have they started their game yet, Adam?
They had said they were starting at 8:30 Eastern. I don't know if that happened or not.
Okay, so they might have just already started. But keep in mind, those are the moving parts, but not to fear, because you're going to get Adam and I at 11:15 on Saturday morning, breaking down the entire slate. It's very robust. So DraftKings is doing the first 8 games. FanDuel and Yahoo are doing the first 4. 2 of which, of course, have weather issues. And then there's a 5-game late or a main slate, but is a heavy, robust 4 o'clock slate. So I have a feeling some more contests are going to spawn for that. So we're going to have wall-to-wall baseball. Don't forget that Sunday is Easter, so we will still have a show here, but your mileage may vary. Had to throw that one in there on what other content sources you're looking at, but we got you covered here at Osmo. So Adam, let's start off the first one. Let's assume no rain. We have Heath Fillmyer at 4,700 going against Masahiro Tanaka. This is an intriguing one on both sides, but I'm always danger weather alert. But this could be a game or a matchup that we could see again on Sunday if the pitchers get pushed. So looking at Tanaka, he gets to go against a much improved Kansas City Royals lineup. However, there are a few more strikeouts living in there with some less disciplined plate hitters, or less disciplined hitters at the plate. Let me put those words in the right order so that makes sense. But it's going to be an interesting one there. Talk to me about Tanaka at 9,200 is a very friendly price point if you want to start your lineups off there on DK.
Yeah, it is. And there's plenty of strikeouts in the Kansas City lineup for him as well. This slate has a pretty nice mix of pitching, so I don't think that he's like a must play or anything like that, but he's as good a play I think as basically anyone. I mean, you look at the pitchers at the top, and you have Corey Kluber in a tough matchup with Atlanta at a very nice price tag, Jose Barrios at a not as appealing price tag in a great matchup with Baltimore, Jameson Taillon in a really good spot, Yu Darvish in a nice spot against Arizona. But Tanaka's spot isn't any worse than those guys. We know he has really, really good strikeout stuff. It's just a matter of if he has his command any particular start, because he will get in trouble with home runs, missing over the plate with pitches that, really have no business being in the middle of the plate. But outside of that, really good swing and miss stuff, piles up some strikeouts, and probably won't go like really deep into the game, but you can still get 6-7 innings out of him. So I do like Tanaka quite a bit.
All right. And since the beginning of 2017, he is getting a 20% strikeout rate to both righties and lefties. Hitters of note here on Kansas City. This is taking into account their stats from the beginning of 2017. In a couple of weeks, I'll switch over to 2000 plus 2019. But for the meantime, I want a little bit of baseline here just to eliminate some of the noise, who's your buddy Jose Altuve, who just hit his 8th home run tonight. Sometimes we can get some skewed numbers here until we get a little bit more of a baseline. But you have Ryan O'Hearn, who's very good in lefty-righty matchups. He has a 344 ISO over his last 200 plate appearances against righties with the robust 427 weighted on base percentage. Lucas Duda, 260 ISO, 350 WOBA. He will probably be batting fifth or sixth. You've got Whit Merrifield, who does make contact, has some nice power speed upside there. Sadly, he's on the wrong side of 30 now, so his ascent was much shorter than what his decline phase will be, but still a nice find there for Kansas City. And then Hunter Dozier. What are your thoughts on Hunter Dozier these days? He's showing more power than I expected this season, but I feel like that's more of a sample size issue that I'm trying to negate by looking at the larger number of plate appearances.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at as well. He's been really good power-wise, but I'm still not completely sold on him. And the price tag has come up a bit. So, I mean, if you're just looking for a one-off that can hit a home run off Tanaka, he's as good a guess as any, but I don't think that I'll be getting there.
All right. Heath Fillmyer checking in with the lowest strikeout percentage against righties over this 2+ year time frame at 16.6 amongst our 16 pitchers on the slate. And then we have he is second worst with 15% going against lefties there. He doesn't necessarily get dinged up for home runs, but against righties it's not great, but the balls are always in play. It seems like with him, feels like there's always runners on and somebody hitting a double. So does not bode well for Fillmyer. But we do have a nice Yankees lineup, even though they are missing essentially a full team. They still have Gardner, Judge, Voit, Gleyber Torres. Those guys are all solid, particularly against a guy that's going to allow a lot of balls in play. I'm assuming you don't even want to dance with Fillmyer, even though he's a sub 5K price point on DraftKings.
I would if the slate were different. There's no Coors Field on the slate. There's no Astros. There's no Red Sox. He's facing the Yankees. So the appeal, the reason that you would consider Fillmyer is if you were trying to jam in a bunch of those bats and none of them are on the slate. So there's no real reason. He doesn't get strikeouts like you said. He isn't bad, at least so far, at limiting damage. He gave up a lot of home runs to righties, but his expected ISO since the start of last season against righties is 174. It was 193 last season, his actual ISO. So he got a little bit unlucky there. He's basically fastball slider. Nothing special about him at all. I think he's good enough where on a different slate I'd have some interest, but not on this one. I'd much rather just go to these Yankees bats, and they're facing a pitcher that doesn't miss bats, and that's always a good thing for power hitters like Aaron Judge. Luke Voit can do damage. Gleyber Torres still relatively inexpensive with multi-position eligibility. It's obviously not as good or as deep a Yankees lineup as normal, but still plenty of power in the middle of it.
All right, on to our next game here. We have Irvin Santana taking on Daniel Norris. Feels like we've talked about Daniel Norris. Oh, because we did just the other day, Adam. He got his start pushed back. Thankfully, I'm pretty sure, at least not tonight, we won't have to talk about Touki Toussaint, but there's a chance he could pop up in the starting lineup on Saturday, depending on what happens with their rotation for Arizona. I'm sorry, not Arizona. Why am I blanking on... Who's he pitched for now? Atlanta. Because Atlanta, let me see. They were in the rain delay there with
they're rained out.
Yeah, so I'm seeing Julio Teherán, but this would be the second day Toussaint has been pushed. So I don't know what they're going to do with him. So just keep an eye on that. We'll talk about that game when we get to the 4 o'clock ones. But looking here, going against Santana, you've got Nicholas Castillo, Nico Goodrum, Miguel Cabrera, Heimer Candelario. Those guys are all pretty solid. Santana not missing as many bats as he did once upon a time here. He's not anybody overly exciting. On the other side here, we, of course, like a lot of the White Sox going against lefties. That would be Tim Anderson, Abreu, Moncada, etc. Starting with the pitchers here, I'm guessing Norris would be the one that you might have some interest in.
I don't really have interest in either one, but if I had to take one, it would be Norris. But I'd still rather just get to right-handed power from the White Sox. Jose Abreu's price tag continues to be really cheap. He's only $3,800 on DraftKings, so that really stands out. Wellington Castillo is a high upside catcher option at $3,400. Eloy Jimenez at $3,900 is nice. Moncada from the right side, I have virtually no interest in, especially at a high price tag. But Tim Anderson should be leading off expensive $4,800 price tag, but still a pretty good play. But focusing on Abreu and Castillo in particular, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yep, and all those guys have a 117 or better weighted runs created plus, which just shows their effectiveness when we look for some neutralized factors such as ballpark, etc. Abreu checking in with a 150 weighted runs created plus, which means he creates runs at a 50% higher clip than the baseline of a normal batter. So that is far into the elite territory for this one. As you're looking at the Detroit guys, Castellanos, there was some noise a while back about Miguel Cabrera being a better hitter during the day, but I think that doesn't matter quite as much as some thought. But what do you like here from the Tigers?
1 through 5, most likely. It sucks that Kristen Stewart's on the injured list because I would love him here, but Santana's been really bad since coming back from injury last season. He's thrown just shy of 400 pitches to lefties and 229 to righties, a 500 expected WOBA to righties, 400 to lefties, giving up a ton of power as well. Obviously, small sample size there, but not missing any bats, getting hit really hard. Nick Castellanos and Miguel Cabrera, especially Castellanos, who is quietly one of the better hitters in baseball, like top 30, top 35 hitters. And he's very reasonably priced here. I'm not worried about the righty-righty matchup. So he's the one that really stands out to me. But then you still get, Miguel Cabrera, DeGrom, Candelario, and Harrison, all at really cheap price tags. So it's a spot where you can stack for really cheap. They do have a 4.8 implied run total right now, the Tigers do. So, on a slate with pitching and not a lot of hitting to pay up for, taking some savings here and just hoping that they blow up Santana and you can get 2 expensive pitchers in isn't a bad idea.
All right, our next game here, for those of you that have not seen, we do have Jacob deGrom going to the injured list. He will have an MRI on his elbow this weekend, so we don't have a projected starter yet for the New York Metropolitans. They are in St. Louis taking on the Redbirds. We do know that Miles Mikolas, the Lizard King, will be going for the Cardinals. I see something happened here with Brandon Nimmo. He's been out since Tuesday with a sore neck. So keep your eye on that one. In the meantime, their utility guy, Jeff McNeil, usually plays one of the infield positions, been covering left field, and Lagares is at center. They have moved J.D. Davis to third in the stead of that shift. Looking to go against Mikolas, and I always, when I see his name, Adam, I think the Ricola commercials. Mikolas. So that always gives me a good chuckle. But he has just a 17% strikeout against fellow righties across the last 400 he has faced. Looking across his last 500 lefties, it's just 16%. So not nearly exciting as one would think. Even with Nimmo out potentially, you've still got Pete Alonso, Robinson Cano, Michael Conforto, Wilson Ramos, and the aforementioned McNeil. That's a strong lineup going against him, but we do only have 16 pitchers that we can look to here. What are your thoughts here on Mikolas?
I'm not interested in going to him. I just don't think there are enough strikeouts there. And again, there's not enough hitting that I want to pay up for. Plus, there is one SP2 that I always really like on this slate. So I'll just roster him where I need to. There are, some power bats in the Mets lineup. Robinson Cano continues to just be incredibly underpriced. He's 3,600 on DraftKings now. Stands out as a top second base option. But Conforto, if you can find the money, Peter Alonso, they both clearly have plenty of power. Ramos is one of the better hitting catchers in baseball. So I don't see myself getting to Mikolas. Cano is the priority for me from the Mets. And then, luxury plays on Conforto, Alonso, Ramos.
Do you think the algorithms are taking into account or just missing the 80-game suspension from last season, and that's keeping his price down a little bit?
That's possible. I hadn't thought about that because it's weird. I mean, I know he didn't have a great year last year, but he continues to hit the ball really hard. And his track record, as an overall hitter, obviously, is really good. So that could very well be it.
Yeah, and just as a Mariners fan, that's my one thought because, of course, he was out for most of the season, and they had the, as Bill Simmons would say, the Ewing effect, and all of a sudden, once he went down, they were good. He came back, and they kept him on the bench for a little bit, and then they ended up faltering, not making the playoffs. He would not have been eligible for it, but that just popped in my mind tonight as to what one of the reasons that he could be somewhat
Yeah.
suppressed with his price. On the other side here, we don't know who's going to go for the Mets, but I think Matt Carpenter against anybody is absolutely fine. You can say the same about Paul Goldschmidt. Marcell Ozuna, fine against righties, fine against lefties. He is finally getting better after somewhat of a lost better part of last season after moving from the Miami Marlins to St. Louis. But I like those top four. And then you never know who else is going to be in the lineup. It's probably going to be some righties, but Jose Martinez is in the mix. Yadier, we'll have to see what they're going to do with him with back-to-back sort of day games this weekend. But if you're looking at the Cardinals, anybody else that kind of catches your eye there?
Yeah, I mean, depends who's throwing for the Mets, but I don't think so. They're priced for Jacob deGrom, so it's going to be a really good value spot. Carpenter at 3,800. I don't really care who he's facing. Goldschmidt at 4,400. Is a nice price tag. Obviously we will need to see who they're facing, but I do think that there's going to be value there.
All right, on to our next game. Couple of pitchers here. We have no weather concerns here other than wind. Estimated to come in between 13 and 17 miles per hour from left field. This is in Chicago, the Windy City, of course. Just a reminder that since they have added or redid the outfield scoring, what do you call it? The replay screen. They've built up some of the surrounding rooftops with additional seating, etc. The wind since their last renovation has not been nearly a thing like it once was, but this one with the wind coming in and it being 50 to 55 at first pitch, we definitely have to give some consideration here to Zack Greinke at 9,500 along with Yu Darvish at 8,900. Darvish has had mixed results during his first couple starts here, but his last one was a good one. If I remember correctly, that was against Miami. This is a somewhat watered down Diamondbacks team because, of course, Paul Goldschmidt no longer with them, Pollock no longer there, and then a couple of their utility guys aren't there either. So we're looking at Christian Walker, Adam Jones, David Peralta, Jared Dyson, all playing prominent roles. Well, at least having the opportunity to have prominent positions in the batting order. I think I'm willing to go back to Darvish in this reasonably good pitching weather situation.
Yeah, I have interest in Darvish here too, and it's because of something he talked about after that start against Miami. He averaged 94.1 miles per hour on his fastball. He struck out, I believe it was 8 in 5 2/3 innings. He walked 4 again, and we've seen him really struggle with his control. But he talked after that start about he had been kind of just aiming and being worried about walking people. And then in that start, he started really reaching back and throwing hard, and that he needs to continue doing that. He also said he was going to start throwing his two-seam fastball a little bit more because it's a pitch that he just trusts more and that he thinks, he can have success with. So he's making some changes. I think that it's still, it's still scary to roster him at an elevated price tag because he's been putting so many guys on base, and because even before his injury, he was trending down. So I think there's, certainly risk, but against an Arizona team that is not particularly scary, and with the wind, at least as of right now, it looks like blowing in on like a cool day, and with a lack of hitters to pay up for, I don't mind getting to some Darvish in tournaments.
All right, looking at Mr. Zack Greinke here next. In his last 800 plate appearances against lefties, he has a 25% strikeout rate, 0.9 home runs, or 0.9 home runs per 9. And then his fly balls have not been nearly as much as I would have thought, just under 30 against righties here. He has a 27% strikeout rate across the last 900 that he has faced. Home run rate is up a little bit against righties, is 1.5 per 9, but again, still reasonably fair. Fly ball rate, he just seems to get hit a little more for power, but with regards to the average overall WOBA, etc., the other metrics that you'd look at for contact and hitting, it's not nearly as scary as the home run number would say at first. But the lineup here, Adam, the lineup is a little bit fierce with Rizzo, Bryant, Javi Baez, Schwarber, even Schwarber batting towards the bottom of the lineup. You got Descalso. All those guys stand in with 110, 112, 125 weighted runs created plus, which means that they can make things happen in against right-handers here. Makes me a little nervous there about Greinke. I think I'd trend still a little bit more towards Darvish. How would you compare those two?
Same here for me. Not a lot of strikeouts in the Cubs lineup. Better hitters in the Cubs lineup. A more expensive price tag on Greinke. All things working against Greinke. I would lean towards Darvish, but then also, I prefer Tanaka. I prefer Kluber. I prefer Taillon. So I don't see me getting to a lot of Greinke here.
All right, now that's our first 4 games. So a bunch of the sites that you're going to be playing on, that's going to be their first section. DK is doing a very, again, robust early slate that's encompassing the first 8 games. The prize pools are just as big as the 5-game slate starting at 7 o'clock. Our next one we're going to look to here is one of the others that we have slight weather concern for. It is the San Francisco Giants in Pittsburgh. There is about a 70% chance of rain, of course. This is a 4 o'clock game. I haven't looked far enough ahead against the weather radar to see if they waited, till 5 or 6, if they could get it in. Gives them a little bit of leeway since this is an afternoon game. Currently, we have Derek Holland going against Jameson Taillon here. Taillon, always an interesting pitcher. We like taking hitters against the Giants, even though they do get a park upgrade anytime they are on the road as compared to home. Taillon generally does a good job of just absorbing what the other team is dishing out, meaning he's always in line for the quality start, but the double-digit strikeout upside is not exactly there with him. The Giants are carrying just a 3.4 implied run total, so that's very nice. Temperature on this one is 55 degrees, slight crosswind. Taillon, I think, is going to be in the mix for the SP1 here, right up there with Jose Barrios in his tasty matchup against Baltimore. We'll talk about them next. What do you like about Taillon? What do you like about, if not Taillon, the Giants hitters?
I like that Taillon's at home. I like that the Giants aren't a very good offensive team. I think that my final interest level in Taillon will depend on the lineup we get from the Giants. So last season, he struck out 28% of hitters at home compared to 19.1% on the road. But he struck out 26% of righties overall, 20% of lefties. At home, he struck out 35.8% of righties, 21.4% of lefties. So he does a good job of limiting damage against everyone, but the strikeout stuff is just a lot better against righties. If you get this lineup with Duggar, Panic, Belt, Crawford as 4 of the top 5 hitters, I'm a little less confident in Taillon racking up strikeouts. I still think he'll pitch well, but I would give, a slight edge to someone like Tanaka, or I would, give it the slight edge to Kluber. Whereas if for some reason we get a bunch of righties from San Francisco, Taillon could end up being, like my favorite pitcher on the slate.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point to make there. If you look at the guys that you mentioned, if you sort of aggregate them real quick, it looks like they have about a 17% strikeout rate against righties, which is below league average, which usually trends in the 19.5 to 20.5 or a little below 20.5. So that's an interesting one. If Derek Holland gets the start, he is at 6,800 here, but he's going against some guys that can be quite dangerous against lefties, and the Pirates have the luxury of switch hitters with Josh Bell and Melky Cabrera, so that helps out their cause. We'll have to see if Cervelli makes the lineup, but he usually gets a favorable spot. We haven't seen the uptick in power that he does have from time to time, and by power, I mean doubles. But you've got Starling Marte, who's above average against lefties. Bell is. Young Ho Gong is back from his 1-year exile there in South Korea for being an idiot and driving while drunk. Don't do that, guys. Come on. We've got Uber. We've got Lyft. And, oh, yeah, there's this thing called taxis. But what do you think here of the Pirates? That was my special service announcement there, Adam.
Yeah. I'm going to Derek Holland here at 6,800. I just like him way too much to not be rostering him at a $6,800 price tag in a park that's perfectly fine for pitchers. Not a lot of strikeouts in the Pittsburgh lineup, but I just think that the price tag's too cheap. I like how much Holland continues to throw his slider. He gets a lot of swings and misses on it, going back to last season when he started throwing it. So obviously I would prefer that he be in San Francisco, and I would prefer that he be facing a lineup with more strikeouts in it. But he's thrown 93 sliders to righties this year, 23.7% swinging strike percentage. Since the start of last season, 22.2%. He's thrown his slider 22.2% of the time to righties with a 20.6% swing and strike percentage. So we've seen him be able to get strikeouts against, tougher opponents than this year. And I think the price tag's just still too low.
All right. Was he the secret SP2 that you were referencing there earlier?
Yeah, here's the SP2 that I always like.
All right. And if we think about it, if you kind of squint just a little bit, it's going to be in the low 50s, maybe a little bit misty. That feels like San Francisco weather this time of year, so perhaps that will help him out. On to our next game here. We should have decent weather, I'm assuming, for Baltimore. So I'm down here just southwest of, or I guess due west technically, of DC, south and a little bit west of Baltimore, but the DMV is what they call the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. We were projected to have, from when they mentioned this, 18 hours ago, 36 hours of 1 to 3 inches of rain. I think we've got about 2 of them so far down here, Adam. So hopefully by 4 o'clock, everything will have moved north beyond Baltimore here. But I'll try another site here to see if they've got some weather up for that one. But it looks like there shouldn't be too much of a concern. I suspect you'll have a lot of things you want to say about Jose Berrios.
Yeah, kind of. He's expensive. And while I don't have a problem with the price tag, and I think that it is a good matchup against the Orioles, I don't know that, like, on DraftKings, I want to pay $1,400 more for Berrios than for Corey Kluber, or $1,600 more for Berrios than for Masahiro Tanaka. The only reason I would have some interest in doing that is, I guess, just because, again, there's a lot of just cheap hitting on the slate. But he's been much better at home throughout his career, for whatever that's worth. Strikeout numbers are better. Walk numbers are better. Power numbers are better. WOBA's better. Like, everything across the board over the last 2+ years has been much better for him at home. I don't dislike Berrios. I just think that I probably get more of the pitchers in like the low $9,000 range.
All right. I wonder if the 2 first sites I looked at just said no weather available. Is because we're currently in both in where you are in Maryland and where I am in Northern Virginia. We're under tornado watch right now. Now that's not tornado warning, which is a little more concerning, but through midnight tonight.
I am?
Yes. Well, Baltimore is. So.
Oh yeah, I'm not Baltimore.
But you're not that far away either. So
yeah,
just putting it out there that a little bit crazy. However, it looks like this rain will kind of blow itself out around 8 in the morning and up through the afternoon, starting at 3 o'clock on. There is between a 0 and 15% chance of rain, all courtesy of the weather.com hour by hour. So I think we're going to be okay from a precipitation perspective there, as long as the field is playable. So hopefully they have it covered.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, not close the.
Sorry, I'm pulling up the tornado watch now.
Oh. I usually wait for the sirens.
Yeah.
Or the alerts to come on your phone, where it's like, where all the phones in the house or wherever you are start vibrating. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
A little late for an Amber Alert. This isn't going to be good.
We had a tornado alarm go off during one of my final exams in law school.
Oh, jeez.
Like in St. Louis, where they get them,
Yeah. Well, knock on wood, we haven't seen anything quite like that since I've been in Virginia, but some crazy, crazy storms nonetheless. On the other side here, Dan Straley. There's my analysis on Dan Straley. So I think I'm going to like particularly the lefties here, but we cannot forget about the power of Nelson Cruz, CJ Cron. The lefties would be Kepler, Rosario, switch hitters, Jorge Polanco, Marwin Gonzalez. This is, God, even without Dozier, without Sano, without Eduardo Escobar, this is still a pretty decent Twins lineup.
Yeah, it is. They have a nice combination of power and guys who put the ball in play, which, is obviously nice for DFS purposes. Kepler, Polanco, Rosario are all difficult to strike out. Cruz has massive power. CJ Cron has plenty of power. Marwin Gonzalez is an okay hitter. It's, a pretty deep lineup that has a nice mix of everything in it. So they are probably, they're my favorite stack on the slate, going against, Straley in a hitter's park and a bad Baltimore bullpen.
All right, that definitely makes sense here. 2 games to go. Moving out to the West Coast for this next one, it's the Toronto Blue Jays in Oakland. We have Matt Shoemaker going against Mike Fiers. I'm actually intrigued by both pitchers here. Fires mostly because of the lineup he's going against, which outside of Grichuk, Smoke, and a combination of Teoscar Hernandez and Rowdy Tellez, depending if they're going against righties or lefties, they have 2.5 to 3.5 okay batters. The rest of them are a mess. You've got Eric Sogard, who may get 18 pitches in his first at bat, but outside of him, he's behind him is Freddie Galvis, who of course will have a 2 home run game at some point this year, but still in the year with 12 home runs. You've got Brandon Drury, the former Diamondback. Now he's with the Jays. You've got Mahle, McKinney. Nobody exciting there. Talk to me here about Mike Fiers at 7,700.
I'm not really that interested in him. I mean, it is a good park for him. It's a Blue Jays offense that doesn't have a ton of power, but I just think I'd rather go to Derek Holland or get to 2 of the better pitchers on the slate, like in the 9K range. I think that targeting against him with some combination of Grichuk, Smoke, Hernandez makes a lot of sense because those guys all have the power to do damage against him.
All right. On the other side, we've got the cobbler. I bring that up. I gotta ask you: do you know what a cobbler is?
Like a shoe person?
There you go, a shoemaker. I asked Jake that, and he said, "You mean like peach cobbler?" I'm like, "No, like a shoemaker." He's like, "Nope, never heard of that one." So, yeah, there's a reference. No wonder that one's never gonna catch on, but it makes me laugh. But the pitch mix slightly changed with Shoemaker. He has been dealing with injuries the last 2 years essentially. He made about 24 total starts. I think this is what is he on, like in that stretch. This is like start number 27 or 28. But when healthy, he is pretty good. This is an athletics lineup that we need to handle with care because they do have power. However, we're looking at another decent day here from a pitching perspective. 60 degrees. This is not the Rogers Center. We do have some wind blowing out between 12 and 16 miles an hour in Oakland. Generally, I start to look at it when it gets above 12 miles an hour because they oftentimes have winds and their park is relatively designed to neutralize anything in the 8 to 10 range. But this starts to make you think that perhaps it will at least be a hitting neutral park with that upgrade there. How are you feeling about the cobbler?
Some strikeout upside for him against Oakland, but I think that it's actually kind of a sneaky spot to stack the A's because not a ton of great hitting spots on this slate, and we know how much power is in Oakland's lineup. Shoemaker, in a limited sample, obviously, since last season, has allowed a 233 expected ISO to righties, 242 so far this season. Chris Davis, Piscotty, Chapman, these guys all have monstrous power, and that's ignoring cheap price tags on guys like Semien and Jurickson Profar. So I think that Oakland is a stack that probably goes a little bit overlooked, but has a ton of upside.
All right, let's hit it with the last game here. We are assuming that it's going to be Julio Teherán going against Corey Kluber. You've got to do all the analysis for Kluber today, so I'll turn that over to you. Tough matchup here against the Braves. Kluber has been up and down to start the season, but he does have the Cy Young caliber pedigree here. Thoughts about Kluber in a sub 5K price point, albeit against a very difficult lineup?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough matchup against the Braves. It's a team I don't like targeting or taking pitchers against, but I don't think anything's actually wrong with Kluber. His stuff for the most part looks fine. I'm a little concerned with his slider, which has been getting pounded so far this season, and the movement on it looks a bit different than it did last year, but I don't want to read too far into that yet. I think he's okay, and the price tag is down enough where I'm willing to find out. The exception to that would be if he's projected for a ton of ownership at the expense of guys like Taillon and Tanaka and Darvish, then I would be willing to just take on those guys at the expense of Kluber in my tournament lineups. But I think that rostering Kluber at one of the lower price points that we will get him at all season long is most likely the best way to go.
All right. And then on the other side here, Teherán, he struggles against lefties. The one thing we can say about the Cleveland team is they have a bunch of switch hitters. It looks like Francisco Lindor may be in the lineup. Is he finally healthy enough to take the field here?
I think I saw that he's out.
Okay.
I could be wrong, though. Maybe I saw that he was out today.
It could be a close. It could be a close return or one of those. He's with the team, no projected return, but at least he's not off on a rehab assignment or something elsewhere. So the two projected lineups I'm looking at do have him in there. So he may be a little rusty from the top-notch caliber of major league pitching, but that's something to take note of. You have Jose Ramirez. Depending on the site you're on, his price is all over the place. On Thursday on I probably lose track of days. On Friday here on Yahoo, I think he was $13. He's 14 for Saturday's slate. So that's a great spot to give him some consideration. He is not yet rounding into form as we would like to see. Apparently, that's my new crutch word of the day. I don't say your mileage is may vary. It's rounding into form. Adam, who knows? Good God. But finish us up here. Anything here from Cleveland that intrigues you, assuming it is going to be Teherán pitching?
So I just looked for information on Lindor, and he says he's ready to go. He's ready to make his debut. So maybe he will be in the lineup. And if he is, obviously he's a good play. Ramirez is still underpriced. You have some left-handed, I don't know if power is even the right word, but left-handed power sometimes from like Carlos Gonzalez, Carlos Santana. If Lindor's back, this lineup just gets, that much better. It gets a dead spot out of the order. It makes them deeper because you can move Leonis Martin to the bottom. I wouldn't really want to get to Teherán all that much. I think I would prefer him to Fiers or Shoemaker, but I think for the most part, I'd be looking to get the guys like Francisco Lindor, Jose Ramirez, maybe some Jason Kipnis.
All right. That is going to wrap it up for us. Remember, this is the DFS Early Bird, your foundational podcast. Use that promo code EARLYBIRD to get 50% off any 1 month package there at osmo.com. You can add on the Fantasy Cruncher package to any of those and join in the fun. The mass multi-entry is a good time. You don't have to be like Adam and play 150 in the 5, the 8, the 15, and the 20. You can be like me and muck around in the low dollar stuff. It's still a good time, and you can feel like your Bucks Deluxe, at least on occasion. You will get us at 11:15 Saturday morning, breaking down everything game by game. We should have confirmed starters by then, as well as an additional 12 hours closer to actual weather for first pitch, which will be helpful for us and sort a lot of things out. So with that, you can follow Adam as we're signing off here at ShipMyMoneyDFS on Twitter. I am at EMACDFS, and it is Osmo_COM. Good luck, gamers.